Archbishop Neinstead and Archbishop Flynn, Bishop Kennedy, and our new kid, Bishop-elect Cousins. My brother priests and deacons and seminarians, so many consecrated women and men, religious, Dr. Briel and Dr. Sullivan, our faculty, our alumni, our benefactors of this renowned Catholic studies program. Praise be Jesus Christ, now and forever, because that's our sentiments this evening, right? Praise of Jesus Christ for the gift, the high gift, that the Catholic Studies program here at the University of St. Thomas has been. It's an honor and a joy for me to be with you, and I deeply appreciate the invitation. And I look forward to being with you this evening and speaking. I'll save the most of my talk for later, okay? Michael Ollis, Michael, O-L-L-I-S, Michael Ollis. The name probably wouldn't mean much to you. It means a lot to me, a kid, well, 27 years old from Staten Island, which is part of the Archdiocese of New York. Michael Ollis, last June, received a medal for bravery in Afghanistan. Actually, he was Master Sergeant Michael Ollis, received a medal for bravery. And because apparently he had driven a Jeep with two of his wounded soldier buddies through very perilous terrain in Afghanistan to get them the help they needed. He got a medal. And 4 weeks later, Michael Ollis got another medal. But this one was posthumously, because 4 weeks later, he stood between an attacker, a terrorist, and another soldier, and took the bullet. I went out to the funeral parlor on Staten Island for Michael Ollis's wake. And I met his father, Ronald. And I had done a little research, and Ronald had received a Medal of Honor in Vietnam. And Ronald Ollis spoke glowingly about his son and said, this crushing as this was, that he had raised Michael to give of himself, actually to be willing to give the supreme sacrifice in laying down his life in the service of God and country. I spoke to Karen, his mother, who told me that she had earlier in the day received the most consoling phone call of all from the Catholic chaplain in Afghanistan, who had assured her that her son had been at Mass and Holy Communion the Sunday before he was killed. Michael Ollis. I bring Sergeant Michael Ollis up today in light of what we just heard from God's holy word, when St. Paul says about himself that he's being poured out like a libation. He had given of himself completely in service of Jesus Christ and the gospel. He had emptied himself. He was being poured out like a libation, which means a sacrificial offering. Paul would, in another spot, use that word kenosis, a word I'm sure the alumni and students of our Catholic Studies program know what it is, that kenosis, that Greek word for emptying, pouring out, as Paul was speaking about pouring himself out, giving the all in service of Jesus and his gospel. St. Paul, Michael Ollis, Jesus Christ, the supreme example. Greater love than this no one has, than to give his life for those he loves. And of course the cross of Christ, the supreme example. You know who, well, Jesus expressed it best, obviously, but you know who in our time has perhaps spoken most eloquently about this would be Blessed John Paul II in what he calls the law of the gift. You're familiar with the law of the gift. John Paul II speaks about it very often. Blessed John Paul II says the law of the gift is this: we are at our best, we are most in conformity to the way God intends us to be when we give ourselves away in love to someone else. The law of the gift, it's what God intends. It is when we are most alive, it is when we are most like God, it is when we are most in conformity to his will, and it is when we are most fully and authentically human, when we give ourselves away in love to another. That's the law of the gift. Jesus taught us. Francis of Assisi taught it. John Paul taught it. Michael Alice lived it. Now, we got a lot to celebrate when it comes to the Catholic Studies program at the University of St. Thomas. We could and will speak about its grand heritage of scholarship. We can and will speak about the glorious contribution it's made to the church in this archdiocese, in this area, in this country, and indeed in the world, in giving hundreds and hundreds of beautifully farmed, well-educated men and women burning with passionate love for Jesus Christ and his church, who are now in roles of service and responsibility all over the place. We could give a whole litany of the reasons to praise and thank God for the gift of the Catholic Studies program, and most of you are sitting in church right now, the reasons why we praise God. But I'd like to propose to you, Dr. Briel, Dr. Sullivan, all of you wonderfully dedicated faculty and alumni and present students and benefactors, that what the Catholic Studies program has most done is not only form the mind, not only form the soul, but to form the heart in the law of the gift. Because no one can immerse himself or herself in the wisdom of the church without learning the law of the gift. That we are at our best, we're acting most in conformity to what God intends. We are most fully alive, most genuinely human, when we give ourselves away in sacrificial love to someone else. And I would propose to you that's what we most celebrate in the Catholic Studies program. And the proof of the pudding is in the eating. As you trace what the alumni are now doing, when you see what they're doing in all vocations and all areas of service, they're living out the law of the gift. And for that we simply say, praise be Jesus Christ, now and forever.